Hello, this is Michel Leviathan Sorbet and you are watching a new episode of Wojennik TV. Today I would like to show you a new review of a game that I have already shown you on our channel during an unboxing video some time ago. This is a game published by Command Post Games and the game itself is called Forest of the Impaled, Dracula's Final Stand. So this is a game in which we will find Dracula. Dracula is a person, a topic that is always very interesting, always very dark, so we can expect that we will find some dark things in this tube, because the game, as you can see, was published not in a box, but in a great tube. And I find this idea very, very interesting, very innovative. That's a thing that makes all the games from Command Post Games to stand out. Now the game is for up to 2 to 7 players. One of those players will control Dracula and his Christian army defending Romania, or to be more precise, Transylvania and Wallachia, against a Muslim invasion. Because the other players from 2 to 6 will take control of Muslim armies, trying to take control of the castles located in Transylvania and Wallachia in the 15th century. They will also try to hunt down Dracula and his men and to take control of all his land. So the game is a semi-cooperative game because one of the players will play on his own, but the others will have to cooperate in order to win. But this cooperation will not be that easy because there are some rules that will make this cooperation very, very difficult. The game is for players from 12 years old, but even a 10-year-older or a 9-year-old person will be able to play this game because there are no elements that need such a player to understand the language or to make some decisions which will be that hard to make. The game itself is played in 1 to 2 hours, but if you understand the rules well, if you do not take a lot of time when thinking about your moves, a game can be played easily in 1 hour. So that's a very great thing. Now, what are the elements in this tube and how the game plays, and what are its strong points and what are its weaker points? I would like to tell you about all this during this video. Let's go. At first, let's take a look at all the elements that are enclosed in this playing tube in which the game is sold. Now, the first element, and the biggest one, is the playing map. The playing map showing a part of Transylvania, Wallachia, Moldavia, Romania, Serbia and Hungary. So that's the place of Europe where the struggle between Dracula and his Muslim enemies will take place. Now, I must say that for all those years that I have been playing war games and board games, I have rarely seen such a beautiful map as this one. I love the way it was done. I love the colors. I love also how the playing space, how the playing board looks like when all the pieces are on it. So chapeau bas to the designers, to the Command Post team, because they have done a magnificent job while designing this board, while deciding of the color of the playing pieces. Now the board, as I said earlier, shows the map shows some regions in the Eastern Europe where the battles will take place. The central point of all this region is Dracula's castle, which is located in Transylvania, and that's the place where the Muslim armies will have to venture in order to take this castle and in order to control most of Transylvania and to conquer the castles located both in Transylvania and in Wallachia. Now, the game board is divided into regions. Those regions have borders The big borders are borders between Transylvania and Wallachia, or between Moldavia and Transylvania, whereas the small borders are just borders between spaces on the playing map. We have two kinds of spaces, clear spaces and mountain spaces. The difference is that only Christian, so only Dracula's armies can enter mountain spaces. They are prohibited, Muslims are prohibited to enter such spaces. Now on the board we can find some villages, some towns, some cities, and also castles. Those castles are indicated by red X's or red crosses. Now the board, as I told earlier, is very pretty. If anyone has any doubts if it's clear, if it's functional, the publisher also added a small piece, a piece of paper showing the same map in a black and white version, so that players can look at it at a glance and to better locate all the crucial places which will be important during play. Now the second element, a very important element, are the playing pieces, and all the players, because we can have up to 6 Muslim players, will have first of all troops. Those will be red or black wooden pieces which will be moved on the board thanks to headquarters, because each Muslim army and also Dracula will have its own headquarter, which will be used in order to move and to attack your opponents. So those headquarters will be placed on the map and they will be used in order to use those troops. Those troops, as you can see, can be placed both horizontally and also vertically, but vertically only when Dracula decides to impale some troops during the game. We also receive discs with some stickers which will be used in order to activate those headquarters, because they will be put into a cup or into another container and then drawn in order to activate one random headquarter. We receive some dice, 8 small dice, black ones and red ones, because during fights, during morale checks, we will have to launch those dice. We receive also 1 big dice in order to count the turns, because in the Forest of the Impaled we will be playing 4 full turns, and in order to keep track of them we will use this dice. It's also a black and red dice, very pretty. We receive also some discs. Those will be used during multiplayer games if the Muslim players do not comply to the rules, and if they violate the rules, then the Dracula player will receive such tokens which will enable him to reroll any dice roll. Now, as I have shown before, we receive also some documents. So we receive the playing map printed in black and white. We receive also a small setup instruction showing how both armies will begin play, or where will they begin play. Starting forces, which also shows how to apply the stickers in the game, and also a small rule book. It's a rule book composed of 8 pages, a very clear rule book, a very well written rule book with some information on the left, which helps to find and locate the important rules that you are looking for during play. And that's all the components that we'll be using while playing this game. Now let's take a look at how a turn looks like and what are the victory conditions for both sides. Forest of the Impaled is played in a series of 4 turns. Those turns will be counted thanks to the big die, big red black die, which will show us the current turn. Now, during those turns, both sides will try to accomplish their victory conditions, which are pretty much the same because they will have to control castles on the map. But both sides will have to control a different number of castles. Muslims, in order to win, have to control all the castles both in Transylvania and Wallachia. So there are many castles both to the south and to the north of the board. Those located to the south are pretty easy to access, pretty easy to conquer, but in the north, especially somewhere very far in the north, in the region of Cluj-Napoca or, for instance, Sigi Soara or Brasov, it's much more difficult. Dracula, in order to win, has to maintain control of at least one castle in Transylvania and one castle in Wallachia. And again, it's rather easy to control at least one castle in Transylvania, but it's much more difficult to maintain control of one of the Wallachian castles. If neither side accomplishes their objectives, the game ends in a draw. The crucial moment of a turn is the activation of a headquarter, because both sides will have headquarters, one headquarter for the Christian side, that will be Dracula, and 6 headquarters for the Muslim armies. Each headquarter has also its own disc, which will be put into a container and then drawn during the turn. A complete turn is composed of 7 steps. The first steps consist of placing all the disc in a cup. The second step is the pulling of one of those chits from the cup in order to activate one of the armies. So a disc drawn from the cup indicates which army, which headquarter will be activated at that moment. When activated, such an army can do some actions. The first and most important action made by a headquarter is to displace troops, is to move troops. Headquarters have a mobility of 3, so they on their own can move up to 3 spaces, but troops can move only by 2 spaces. Troops cannot move by themselves, so you do have to possess a chief with them in order to move them. You also have to take into consideration that troops cannot be moved more than once during a turn. So even if we move into a space where another headquarter is located and then that headquarter is activated, it will not be able to move those troops which were already moved during a turn. Headquarters can also recruit. Muslims can recruit to the south of the Danube River, so in Rumelia, whereas Dracula can recruit in Transylvania. Both sides can recruit in castles or villages. An exception is the mountainous region of Peonari, where Dracula can recruit new troops. Recruitment is extra simple. It consists of throwing a die. The number indicates the number of troops recruited in the region. What is interesting is that we have 6 Muslim armies and only 1 Christian army, and all those Muslim armies will have to cooperate during the game. But the problem is that Muslim players cannot talk to each other during play. Well, they can talk about things irrelevant to the game, but they cannot talk about strategy, about tactics, about their planned movement. They have to work separately, but in such a way that they should anticipate what their colleagues are about to do. If during play Muslim players give some hints one to another or make other unsportsmanship things, Dracula receives special counters which will enable him to relaunch any die roll during play. So that's a nice mechanism because Muslim forces are much more numerous than Christian ones, but their coordination is much less effective. After activating headquarters, this headquarters can move troops. If during such an activation or after such an activation, troops of two different sides meet in a region, a battle will take place. Each headquarter, each chief has a certain rating. Muslim armies have a rating of 2. An exception is Prince Radu, who has a rating of 3. It's an interesting person because you can also use an alternate cube of Radu, and that's a Christian cube. That's an optional rule which enables to change a little bit the way the game works, and if you decide to do it, you will receive 2 Christian leaders, Vlad Dracula and Prince Radu. But in the basic game, Radu is a Muslim leader, and he's an exception to the rule that Muslim leaders have only a rating of 2. His rating is 3. Dracula's rating is 4. Now, why that's important? Because, first of all, sometimes during play you will have to do some morale checks in order to verify if you can delay the order in which your army will be activated. When your disc is drawn from the cup, you may decide to pass a morale check in order to delay your activation. If you succeed in such a morale test, your disc is put again in the cup and another army is drawn. That's you can activate this capability only once per turn, but it's very effective because sometimes it enables you to wait a little bit longer, see what other armies do on the board before moving and activating your headquarters. Another option also is to accelerate your activation. If you want to act right now in order to exploit a good situation on the board, you can also decide to activate earlier. But in order to do this, you also have to pass your morale test. So it's easier to pass your morale test when you have a rating of 4 than if you have a rating of 2 or 3. A morale test is passed if you roll a number equal or less than your rating. And the second aspect of rating is the fact that the rating influences the number, the quantity of troops that can be in each group that a leader has with him. The maximum of troops that can constitute an army is 12, but in such an army you have to organize your troops into groups. The quantity of troops in each group has to be not bigger than your rating. So Dracula can, for instance, have 3 groups of 4 troops, but each Muslim leader except Radu has to divide his troops into groups of 2. Now that's important because during combat you will have to activate each group in order to find the enemy and to attack him. Now, as I said earlier, a battle ensues when 2 armies of different sides find themselves in the same region. What is important is that Muslim armies can move only in clear regions. Christian armies can move also in mountainous regions, so for instance Peonari. So for Muslim players it's much more difficult to access the north and also to hunt down Dracula and his army who can put himself in a strategic position in the center somewhere in the mountains. And when 2 armies meet, the first thing done is trying to locate your enemy. In order to do that, we throw some die. The number of those die will be equal to the number of our groups. Each die roll equal or less than our chief's rating activates a group and enables such a group to participate in combat. So in this situation, the Muslim player will have 3 active groups during the first round of combat, whereas Dracula will have 1 of his groups. It's important to have more troops activated than your opponent because this enables also to attack inactive groups. Normally, you can attack and destroy only active troops, but if you have numerical superiority when it comes to active troops, you can also attack inactive groups. The advantage is that active groups, while attacking one another, do damage simultaneously, whereas when you attack an inactive group, you first deal damage and then you receive a counterattack from that group, from the surviving troops that remained. Now, attacking is very simple because you just throw some die, you throw some dice, you verify if you obtain any 4, 5 or 6s. Each is a hit, each is one troop of your opponent destroyed. Attacking, as I said earlier, is simultaneous when it comes to active groups. When it comes to inactive groups, they suffer casualties first, then they can return fire. After the first round of combat, the defender may decide to retreat to one of the regions bordering the one where the battle is taking place. If he decides not to retreat, the attacker has the same option. If both decide to stay and fight another round, a new round is played with the inactive groups again verifying if they can find their enemies. Active groups maintain this status until the end of the battle. Combats are a little bit different when we fight in a region containing a castle, because when entering in such a region, the defender has always the possibility to man the castle and to decide to hide some troops that he possesses in this castle. The number of troops that can hide inside a castle is equal to the rating of this castle. So, for instance, in this small region of Valrea, it will be one troop will hide in this castle, whereas in Castle Dracula it will be 3. The units hidden in such a castle cannot be destroyed automatically. First of all, we have to get rid of all the units which are not hidden in the castle, so a normal battle takes place, and then the attacker has the possibility of storming the castle or decides to siege the castle. The difference is that when you storm a castle, you just throw your forces against that castle and you try to eliminate the defenders. But the defender always strikes first. It's a 1 versus 1 battle, so if the defender always throws 4s, 5s or 6s, he can eliminate many attacking units. Those attacking units can try to eliminate the defender only if they survive a volley from the defender. Another option is to decide to build a siege. The defender stays in the castle, whereas our troops at the end of each turn will launch a die. If the result is equal or less than the number of turns that the siege is taking place, then the castle falls and all the defenders are eliminated. After the activation of a headquarters, after recruiting units, movement, battles, we repeat those steps starting from the first one. So we pick a new headquarters and we activate it. Then we roll for sieges. At the end of the turn we verify also supply. Supply is checked in a very simple way. We just trace a line from our region to one of our home regions. If we are unable to, then we are eliminated. In our case, nothing happens. And at last we end the turn and we play a new one. Now, because this game is about Dracula, about Vlad the Impaler, we have also a very interesting mechanism in this game, which enables the Christian player to place impalements on the map board. Now, impalements are just troops, but placed in a different manner than troops. It's placed standing up on the map, on the end. So such troops which are in the dead pile, can be placed in such a way by Dracula in each region that he moves through, including the one where he starts his turn. Those impalements will hinder Muslim movement because each enemy group entering such a region will have to verify their morale. Those troops have to make a morale check. If this morale check is failed, such units scared of the impalements will have to return to the region from where they came from. If the morale check is okay, an impalement is removed from the region. So that's a great concept, a great idea, a nice thing, a nice addition to the game. The rounds played during the course of a turn will consist of activation of headquarters. At the end of turn 4, we verify if any of the sides has achieved victory. And that's it when it comes to the mechanisms, the rules of the Forest of the Impaled. Now I would like to talk a little bit about what are my opinions about this game and pass to a conclusion. What are the strengths and weaknesses of this title? Now, at first I would like to say that I really like Dracula's story. Bram Stoker's Dracula is one of my favorite books. So every game that includes Dracula is always something that interests me. And I had some great expectations concerning this title. I was very anxious to try it, and I must say that I was not disappointed. It's a game with a fantastic climate, so if someone likes the story of Dracula, if someone also knows the history of Dracula's predecessors and its origins, he will find the story and the setting of the game very appealing. When we speak of strong points, of great points of this game, one of those will certainly be the quality of the components, because everything you will find in this tube is top-notch. I have already said that the game map is one of the most beautiful that I have ever seen. I have played hundreds of games, but rarely I have seen such a great map. And it's not the fact that it's a very functional map. It's not a map which is very accurate historically, but it's just something that appeals to me. I very much like its aesthetics, the colors used, the font used on the map, and when we place the playing cubes in it, it's just a small piece of art. So the map is really fantastic. Everything else you receive, so the booklet, the wooden pieces, are just okay. Those look great on the map and they are of fine quality. It's a very interesting topic because there aren't many games about 15th century conflicts in Europe, and in this part of Europe neither. So it's great that there is a game covering this subject, because in my opinion every single war fought between the Turks and the Austrian Empire, the Polish Commonwealth, etc., is a subject which is just such wealthy but so rarely taken into consideration with by game designers, that every new game covering this subject is a small gem and a piece and a step forward. What I like is the fact that we will find in the game many climatic mechanisms. So we receive the fantastic mechanism of impalements, we have some sieges, we have the cooperation rules. So there are some very interesting, very unique mechanisms in this game. It's not just a copy of other games. You do feel that the mechanisms are well linked with the theme. What I like is the fact that you can play with this game in both a combination of 2, 3, 4, 5 or up to 7 players, and it's also great that there is no player elimination in the game, because You always can lose your army, lose your troops, but even so, you can still recruit new troops and continue playing. Your impact on the final victory or defeat may not be as great as if you hadn't lost your troops, but you still participate in the game. It's not bang, where you get eliminated during turn 1 and just sit during 30 or 45 minutes doing nothing. You can still influence the game play, and that is great. What I really like is the time of play, because as I said at the beginning, we can find on this tube the information that playing time is from 1 to 2 hours, but it's rather 1 hour. So it's a very short game in terms of war games, because I believe that this game can be classified as a war game. You can easily play 2, 3, even 4 games during one night, changing sides or trying the variant that was added to the game, because that's another thing that needs to be mentioned. We do have a variant in this game which allows us to play with 2 Christian players, with Prince Radu switching sides. That's also great because the replayability of the game will increase and is much greater than if you had not, if this rule was not incorporated. What I like is the fact that the rules are very well written. The game itself is rather easy, and the rule book is also an easy one to read and to understand, but the balance between the complexity of the rules and the aspect of decision making during the game is just okay. The rules are not too easy and the complexity is not too high, so the balance is just as it should be, and that is great. I have already told you, I have already said about the additional variants, so the replayability of this game will also be a great thing. Now, if I would have to search some negative points about this game, I would cite one. The game uses dice for all the mechanisms that need some randomness. And where there are dice, there is always randomness. So during battles, during recruitment, you will do some dice rolling, and those results will sometimes be frustrating, because you can have a big superiority. You may have done a fantastic strategic move, and you may have blocked the path of retreat to your opponent, but then the dice just seem not to be cooperating with you. So you just have to keep in mind that while using dice, the results will sometimes be frustrating. Love it or hate it, it's a way many wargames function, so you just have to live it, or you have to search for some games without dice, because there are also games that do not use dice. But for me it's okay, it's just a way of randomizing things. It's not chess, it's not checkers, it's a war game designed with dice. There is not that much dice rolling, because there are some games where you roll the dice every single turn many times, with many rerolls, with many modificators, etc. Here I believe the quantity of dice rolling is just adequate, it's okay. Concluding, Forest of the Impaled, Dracula's Final Stand is a game about a great topic, very well done, with a fantastic map, with great quality components, which plays in 1 hour easily in a group of 2 to 7 players. A game that allows a great replayability, a game with a great climate and with some great mechanisms. I highly recommend you try this game. That was Forest of the Impaled, Dracula's Final Stand from Command Post Games. Try our other materials, check out our unboxings or our reviews. Until then, bye.